So for my capstone project, I decided I wanted to build a model rocket. I've always had a passion for building things with my own two hands, engineering, solving problems, and I've been very into aerospace ever since I was basically in preschool. So I figured it would be a good fit for my capstone. So I had a bunch of old rocketry parts in my room, but it had been a while since I had actually built and flown a rocket. So, I figured it would be fun. So uh, here's what I did for my capstone. So most of the parts that I had in my closet were from other rockets. I had a couple old body tubes, some transition tubes, an old booster from a two-stage rocket that unfortunately crashed. I also had the parachute from that same two-stage rocket. I had some old rocket motors, um, some engine block pieces, and a nose cone. So originally I was going to put the body tube and the nose cone on top of the um, booster from the two-stager I had and make a single-stage rocket. But the issue that I realized there was that on top of the booster, there was nothing to actually hold the engine in. You see, the issue is that when you're building a rocket, you need something to hold the engine in place. Otherwise, it will fly into the body tube, and obviously, it won't actually lift off because the engine will just be going kind of off on its own. So I needed to engineer some kind of solution to hold the engine in place. So here's what I came up with. Idea now. So this is a rocket body tube. This is what you actually put the rocket motor in. So originally, to hold the engine in, what I was going to do is I was going to take one of these, put the body rings around, hold rings around it, and then I stick it in here like so. And then what I do is put it kind of like this, and as you can see, the motor sticking out the end. What it does is it goes directly over the motor tube in here, and then this has an empty engine block that I fill with clay or something glued in, so when the rocket fires, it just presses up against this, shoots the rocket up, and then the ejection charge goes off and blows this off, and parachute comes out. Now, what I realized was that how's it called? Basically, when the motor is actually firing, it would basically just shoot off the top of the rocket and the parachute out, and it just wouldn't work at all. So I had to think up something else, and quick, because of course I got less than 2 weeks to do this. So what I came up with was this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take, I don't know, like a Dremel. I'm gonna empty this out. I'm gonna take a Dremel or a saw or whatever and cut the top off this, and then I'm gonna stick it down here right over the motor tube, because I think if I flare this out a bit, it will just fit over the engine tube. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue it down with like some putty or something. I'm gonna take the pump out, obviously, and kind of open it up, and then have this screw cap on top of here holding the rocket motor in, because it doesn't actually have to be all the way down the tube, just kind of not flying up the body tube, but I'll put in some like plasticine or whatever just to space it out, obviously. But so yeah, that's my idea, is I'm gonna use this to hold the rocket motor in. So yeah. So I hope you understand the issue with my original idea and what the issue with it was. So basically what happens is I use the top half of the body tube to hold the rocket motor in the bottom half in. The issue is that the top half can detach, so if the rocket motor is pushing up against it, it will just shoot the top of the body of the rocket off. So as you can see there, my idea was to use a screw cap, which is an idea I had for a while. The issue is that this plan also had a flaw unbeknownst to me. So next up, you'll see what that flaw was and how I fixed it. So I believe in the last video, I covered the fact that I wanted to make a removable engine block for my rocket by essentially, you give me a minute here. By essentially taking a screw cap and gluing it, puttying it in this area so that I could unscrew and rescrew it to remove the motor. The issue I found with that is, as you can see, there are these very high sides, maybe about 1.5 inches around either side of the motor, so I couldn't really reach in. It wouldn't really be easy for me to reach in and unscrew something. So I was thinking if there was a potential better way to do it, and had a kind of a burst of inspiration. So I don't know if you can see that, but just above the rocket motor, there's kind of this rectangular shaped hole in the bulkhead there. And essentially what that hole is that under normal circumstances, that would be what holds the motor lug in place. So I can demonstrate to you here. So essentially, in a regular rocket, single stager, because this is from multi-stage, what you do is you take this motor lug and you put it in through that hole, and then it would lock in the side there, and it would hold the motor in place. Now, I can't really do that without just totally demolishing that booster and starting from scratch, but what I did think of was, if I can find it here, it's somewhere. Sorry, I'm a little messy right now. Sorry, it turns out I was sitting on it. So this here is a coil of jeweler's wire. So it may be a little hard to explain, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a length off of this because my mom's got some mini wire snippers and pliers from the time she did jewelry. And then I'm going to take one of these cardboard straws from a juice box, and I'm going to cut a length of it, and I'm going to stick it through that hole, and then I'm going to drill another hole out the bottom, and then the jeweler wire is going to wrap around the engine casing and then wrap around the top to basically tie the motor in place. And I'm going to use a pair of pliers to undo and redo it each time. I'm going to have 2 strands holding in there. So hopefully that is enough to resist all, I believe it is 5 pounds of thrust that these engines produce. I'll have to get back to you on that, but yeah, so that's my ingenious idea to create an engine block. So I hope to show you guys that. Thanks. Yeah, it looks like a standard C motor would produce about 6 Newton seconds, or 6 newtons of thrust. So I think that would be about 6 kilograms per square meter. So that's actually quite a bit. So more than I was expecting. So I really hope this jeweler's wire is going to be twisted up, is going to be up to the task. But I mean, if this thing could hold it in, I'm sure it's probably fine. If it's not and it fails horribly, it'll at least be fun to watch. Maybe wondering where I got this idea from. It's actually because, as some of you may know, I'm an air cadet, so recently I got my medals mounted, which is where you get them put on a cool backing. It looks like this, not to flex or anything, but I got the service medal with bar and the Legion Medal of Excellence. They really think I'm something special, I suppose, even if I don't. And but anyway, so the way they affix it to the backing, hang on, damn phone not focusing. There we go. Fucking okay. Yeah, so as you can see there, you got some jeweler's wire affixing the bar, my medals to prevent them from jangling around, and then I also got that on the little ribbons I got holding my rosette on. Though it's a lot the jeweler wire they use is a lot finer here, so I'm not sure if you can see it, but yeah. So that's my basic idea. I was considering if it looks like it's not going to be up to the task, maybe taking a piece and folding it back around and then braiding it in on itself to strengthen it. But
yeah, I'll have to actually get this done and do it. So I'll grab a drill, I'll grab a tripod, and I'll be back in a minute.
All right, so now that I got a plan in place, my first step is to mark out the holes where I am going to uh, put the first straw. So as you can see, what I am doing here is I am taking a pencil, marking a dot on one side of the engine, and then I am tracing a line down the side of the body tube to make another dot in the same position on the bulkhead at the bottom of the booster, um, so that I can then drill a hole to put our first straw in. All right, so our next step after marking out the holes where I want to drill is, of course, going to be um, taking our drill and drilling one hole on either side of the through each bulkhead so that we can put the straw through. So as you can see, I am doing that now. I had a bit of trouble where I forgot to hold down the booster so it spun around, but it looks like everything went pretty good. So I got a hole on both sides. And as you can see there, it took some widening the holes and having to force the straw into the hole, but I finally got the straw in the hole, so that's good. Then I mark the straw to cut them to size so that I can put them in the hole and have the wire running through them. And then it is just a matter of cutting the straws to size so that they can be put in the holes and have the wire run through them. All right, so the next part isn't super exciting. It's just taking some glue, taking a pencil, and then gluing those two straws into their respective holes so that we can move on to the next part, which is putting the wire through.
All right, so as you can see here, I braided two pieces of jeweler's wire to get together in on themselves for extra strength. So now that I've got these two, I am going to feed them through the loops on my body tube down both ends. And I'm going to use the plier to kind of shape them in here. All right, so you can see what we got in there. We got a length of wire tied around the engine tube at the bottom and then through and then up and over the top, tied together, twisted together up here, and it's tight enough, as you can see, it's causing the insides of the motor to bulge in, which hopefully isn't an issue, but it should be enough to hold the engine in place during flight, so I'm happy with it.
All right, so now that we've got our engine block in place, our next step is to glue the shock cord in place. So the shock cord is essentially a very long elastic band that attaches the two halves of the rocket together, and it's also where you tie the parachute on. It's essentially there to prevent there from being to dissipate the shock when the two halves separate in flight. Um, so to glue it on, I basically took each end of the elastic band and glued them inside the wrapper for a pair of chopsticks and then glued them inside the rocket body. At first, I had some issues just working with the glue because my fingers kept getting stuck together and the paper got ripped. But eventually, I got the shock cord glued into place, and then all that was left to do was to test it by basically just pulling it apart and bouncing the rocket around. And now, of course, that we got the shock cord glued into place, now we get to attach the parachute to it. And then I finish up gluing the rocket by gluing the nose cone onto it. So now that the body's completed, we can move on to painting. And then next up on our list of things to do is to spray paint the rocket. This is the last thing we need to do before we can go out and launch it. So I take it underneath my deck to do the spray painting.
you want a well-ventilated area, of course, because you don't want to be breathing in fumes, but you also want a place that is somewhat enclosed so that you aren't having, bugs getting in and getting stuck in the paint. So I start off doing a base coat of primer, and then I do one coat of yellow paint, and then another coat of yellow paint just as a touch up. I was actually going to do like a Blue Angels paint scheme and put some blue paint on as well, but uh, due to time constraints, I didn't really get that far. So yeah, after I'm done the painting, then it's just wait for the paint to dry, and then we're gonna go out and launch it finally. So this is the first of my launch attempts. This one didn't work, I think, because there was some paint got in the engine, so the igniter burned but didn't actually set off the engine. So we just tried again. And here's when all that hard work finally paid off.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Alright, so I think that was a pretty good launch. As you can see, our parachute deployed properly, so I had some concerns that maybe it would get pushed up into the rocket body, but looks like everything went to plan. Didn't go quite as high as I expected. I'm guessing it's probably just maybe a bit heavier than I thought it was. But yeah, overall, pretty good launch. I'd say that's a success. Actually might be a good thing it didn't go too high because it is kind of close to the road, but yeah, so that was pretty good.
And that was my capstone project done. All right, thanks for listening.
Well, that thing just came straight down, eh? Where's the other one? Did the other one fly?